Hi, I'm Kirby Franze, and I'll be discussing Chapter 6, Question 3, which is what is the best course for nations to take when national security appears to be threatened by free speech? I find this to be a relevant question as in our current climate, President or former President Trump is being stripped of his First Amendment rights and his ability to communicate to the masses via the major social media channels such as Twitter and Facebook. Many people feel that the Constitution should protect against government action censoring a citizen's speech. However, the reason these social media giants are able to completely swipe the former president of his accounts and access to communicate with the public is because many of these social media giants like Twitter are private, according to an article by the Golden Times. Whether you agree with Trump being banned from social media or not, the Global Times points out that if an influential public opinion figure was banned on social media platforms in other countries, especially those deemed as enemies by the U.S. would vehemently accuse those countries of suppressing freedom of speech. And the same notion as Trump with social media and the social media giants being able to say he incited violence or broke their community standard rules, the government can put the same blanket over anything and say it violates national security. Being able to do this can be good at times, and at other times it can keep the wool over Americans' eyes so that they don't get to see the full picture, because it can't be disclosed due to national security, see? Trump released the NSS in December 2017. It released his ideas for national security for America. According to Brookings.com experts, it outlines an administration's appraisal of U.S. national security interests, the global security environment, challenges to U.S. interests and policies, and tools for securing such interests. Something I found funny, yet not funny given the current climate of ripping away our American constitutional right to freedom of speech, is the fine line that has been taken by big tech in interfering in our national security and presidential affairs. By taking away Trump's ability to communicate to his followers via the internet, which is the main way people get and receive their information, the Wall Street Journal cites Jonathan Hugheschild, director of the Communications and Technology Task Force for the American Legislative Exchange Council, a conservative nonprofit group regarding big tech social media companies, banning Trump, that right or wrong, they made a political decision, and that was there, a political decision to begin with. Now the spotlight is fully on. I could not help but really go down a rabbit hole with this one that made me get quite irate, because it made me ask the question, where is the line? And should these 5 mega social media platforms have the ability to silence people? If they can do it to the president of the purportedly freest country on the planet, then they can silence anyone, right? Our book states in Chapter 6 on page 107 that the United States expressions of racial hatred and group defamation are protected speech. Groups and individuals who openly engage in speech disparaging people of particular races, creeds, or colors can do so freely. They can even go far as to advocate genocide as the ultimate solution to the problems they perceive as associated with the group they choose to hate. After reading this chapter and seeing this quote, it reminded me of a Twitter post by Donald Trump Jr. where he says, so the Ayatollah, I might be butchering that, and numerous other dictatorial regimes can have Twitter accounts with no issue despite threatening genocide to entire countries and killing homosexuals, etc. But the President of the United States should be permanently suspended. Mao would be proud. And according to our chapter, when it comes to national security and freedom of speech, the answer is yes. But is that fair? Is that right? In conclusion, I think the best course for nations to take when national security appears to be threatened by free speech is to not stipend the aforementioned free speech. Otherwise, we are heading to end up like current Germany, who the chapter says, due to their historical past with racism and bigotry, it says on page 107 in the Kamalapur text, that Germany permits wide restrictions on extremist political speech, even to the point of prohibiting any writing or broadcast that inches racial hatred or describes cruel or otherwise inhumane acts of violence against humans in a manner which glorifies or minimizes such acts. The in-text citation is from Stein in 1986. Lastly, I'll end with a quote from Marco Rubio from the previous mentioned Wall Street Journal article where he says the impact of the platform's decisions suggest the tech industry's sway over public conversation is too great. We are now living in a country where 4 or 5 companies, unelected, unaccountable, have the monopoly power to decide we're going to wipe people out. We're going to erase them from any digital platform, whether it's selling things and the like. End quote. There is so much on this topic, and even more points to be made about the press and freedom of speech in relation to national security on page 109, but I've run out of time. And I didn't get to everything. I didn't get to really expand on this, but this whole chapter that talks about freedom of speech in concurrence with national security is extremely interesting. I'm sure that you all read it, but I encourage you to kind of dig deeper and kind of apply it to what's going on in the world today, because there are some really just profound things happening in the world today with our freedom of speech and national security. I appreciate y'all listening. Thank you for your time, and I hope you have a great night.